You're watching Notepad and I'm your host Ibrahim Sani. We continue our adventure in 2020. We're trying to find the best on how to maximize our personal wealth. What better company to discuss that other than iMoney? Joining me this evening is Mitul Lakhani, the Group CEO of iMoney. Mitul, thanks for spending the time with us. Let's do a little stock take on iMoney. How is the company doing currently?
First of all, thank you very much for having me here, Ibrahim. It's a pleasure. In terms of how we're doing as a business, we made some really good progress over the last few years. So today, iMoney is essentially a personal finance company. What we do is we empower consumers to make intelligent decisions on money matters. And the way we do that is really giving them a whole host of tools and services to be able to, one, help educate them around simple personal finance concepts and principles, to help them make sort of the right decision when it comes to products that they're looking for. And three is really helping them through the application process as well. So over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, we've grown in each of the markets that we're in. So we're in 3 markets, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. We were growing about 30 to 40% year on year across all of our key metrics. We have over 30 million users coming onto our websites in each of the countries that we're in, who are in some shape or form wanting to understand or learn about either personal finance or learn about specific products, or want to compare products, or even at the end of the journey looking to apply for products as well.
iMoney hasn't been raising funds. Why is that so?
So we actually have been raising funds. So we raised a publicly announced Series A and Series B. So the last publicly announced round was done in 2014. Where we had a strategic shareholder by the name of iSelect, which is publicly listed in Australia, came in and invested in the business. And since then, they've continued to invest in the business, and they've taken their shareholding up to now 85%. So we're effectively 85% owned by iSelect, and they've continued to fund the growth of the business for the last few years.
So how is iMoney going to reinvent yourself in the near future? Or is there a need to reinvent?
Look, I think the key thing for us is what is important for consumers, especially when it comes to personal finance. So what we've done is, if you look at our evolution of the business, we started off as what people would term as a very simple comparison site. Since then, we've evolved into more than just a comparison site. So what we've done is we've built out our learning center, which has very insightful content in very simple to understand formats for consumers to learn about financial products and as well as personal finance. That includes giving tips around savings and budgeting and so on and so forth. So really becoming a thought leader in the personal finance space for consumers. The second piece is around providing them with tools to help them decide which is the right product for them, if that's the route they want to go. So recommendation engines, need-based analysis. And the third piece is really helping them with the application as well. Above and beyond that, over the last 24 months, we launched iMoney Credit Score, right? Which again is another tool to help consumers understand what is their financial health, and more importantly, what they can do to improve it and what that means to them. So going forward, we want to build on these core principles, which is what are the tools and services that we can provide to consumers to get them to better understand their personal finances or the state of their personal finances, and what are the key areas in which they can improve their personal finances and getting towards a journey of where they can ultimately have good financial well-being.
So what would be some of the tools that you can share with us in terms of improving somebody's understanding or comprehension of their personal finance situation?
Sure. So first thing is, like I mentioned, so credit score was for us a big step in that direction. So specifically around credit score, what does that mean, right? So when a customer comes onto iMoney and signs up for iMoney Credit Score, what they get as an outcome of that is a very user-friendly product, which not only tells them what their score is, because score ultimately is just a number.
Yeah, but how is this different from CTOS and CCREs?
Right, so what we've done is we've designed it in such a way that it's easy for consumers to understand, number one. Number two, we've also removed one of the biggest barriers, which is we've made it free to consumers, right? And then number three, on the back of that, we use that and work together with consumers to help them and provide actionable insights for them to improve their score and their financial health.
Financial institutions rely more on CCREs, less on CTOS, none on your product. How do you I guess, make this sellable for consumers?
So first and foremost, the reason why we launched iMoney Credit Score was to make that available to consumers and to help customers understand why their credit score is important. So for us, it's a way of getting customers on the journey, started on the journey to understanding their financial health. That then helps them better understand which are the products that they can potentially qualify for if and when they're interested in the products, right? So it's really about taking steps in the direction towards making information readily available to consumers at their fingertips, so they start taking more control of their finances and getting them going the roadmap to improving their personal finance well-being.
Okay,
right?
Mitul, taking the landscape away, zooming out of iMoney as a
Sure.
company, Malaysia has a rather high, if not one of the highest household debt to GDP. We're hovering just under 90%, perhaps even more now, and regionally, it's not doing too good for our neighbors as well. Thailand is over 80%, Singapore as well. Do you think that there is a situation where we have to realize that there is not a problem with us managing personal finance? It's more of us earning too little of an income to manage our finances?
Look, our view is there's two fundamental challenges today. One is, as you quite rightly pointed out, household debt to GDP, I think, is around 82%. It's still come down from 86% about 12, 18 months ago. But fundamentally, so that to me is more about responsible borrowing, irrespective of what your income is, right? So how can we help Malaysians understand what is the right level of borrowing for them? And more importantly, even beyond that, why is there a need for them to borrow money? And so we help them along that journey, and we want to help them along that journey in terms of making the right decisions based on what their income is, what their expenses are, and what is their inherent need for credit. The second fundamental challenge is people who need credit today don't necessarily get access to it, right? So we look at it in terms of twofold challenges. One is around responsible borrowing, and again, iMoney Credit Score lends value to that because it allows the consumer to really get a view of what their balance sheet looks like, right? So they get a view of what are the loans outstanding, what credit card debt outstanding, etc. On top of that, the score basically helps them understand is how are they doing in terms of their repayments, whether they can afford those loans, so on and so forth. So we then take that data and then we help the consumer with insights, like I mentioned earlier on, in terms of not only what they can do to improve their score, but in terms of ultimately what is the right product for them. So simple example. You may have today a loan which is, you're paying an interest rate of say 6 or 7% out there. There may be another loan out there which is actually a cheaper interest rate that don't know about. So we would be able to take that information and come back to you and say, hey, you can actually save money on your monthly installments, bring down your debt service ratio, reduce your leverage by ultimately basically taking a loan at a much lower rate. And ultimately take that money that you're saving on the installments and you can put that into a savings account or an FD and so on and so forth. So we want to be, as we grow as a business, we want to be a lot more proactive in terms of how we can really help consumers make smart decisions with respect to all of their money matters.
Okay, we'll take a short break before we continue our conversation with Mitul of iMoney. Thanks for staying on with us. I'm still with Mitul of iMoney. We're here talking about the general picture of how an individual can better maximize their knowledge and comprehension on personal finance. One idea is on some borrowers might not get the products that they need, particularly from the banking sector. Hence, the conversation of digital banking and whether or not this could be the impetus or the answer moving forward for Malaysians who need credit but at this present moment can't gain access to. The status right now is, of course, Bank Negara soliciting public views and opinion on the situation of digital banking. We want to also learn a little bit more about what the future is going to look like for Malaysia when digital banking actually is going to be kicked off very soon, actually. So Mitul, let's get some of your ideas on the situation of digital banking in Malaysia, and perhaps you can contrast it with those that are currently happening in South Korea and perhaps even in Singapore.
Sure. So digital banking as a concept, has been around in the UK and the US for several years now. And fundamentally, it rose out of an inherent need from consumers to get access to financial products, which they may not have been getting before, number one, and getting products which were more meaningful and more customized to what customers were looking for. Now, in Malaysia specifically, I think towards the end of last year, they released a draft framework in terms of how to apply for a digital banking license. So we expect several parties to be applying for that digital banking license. Part of that, there was language around the applicants need to show how they're going to serve the underserved or the unserved portions of the market. Now, what that is specifically and what the definition of that has not been made clear. But our understanding is it would be most likely in terms of how can you make financial products easily accessible to those who don't have that accessibility today or those who don't necessarily cannot access it, right? And this cuts across not just consumers, but also SMEs and micro SMEs as well. Now, if you look at what's happened in the US and the UK in terms of digital banking, a lot of these digital banks have focused on one or two products only. So what they're doing is they're effectively taking, say, a credit card or a savings product or a deposit product and really starting with that. And what they then do is then build an ecosystem in terms of the users through user experience, product features, and really unique propositions for consumers, including consumers who may not have had access to traditional banking products before. And then they build on that in terms of then bringing in additional products. I think from a Singapore perspective, we've only just started, I think the government's only just started receiving applications for a digital banking license. So I think still early to say. So if you look at digital banking as a whole, it's about making products more accessible, making the customer journey easy for customers to get to those products, and more importantly, providing a very digital and seamless process and experience for consumers.
From the corporate side, the language that Bank Negara puts out is also on trying to find or ascertain how these companies can be viable and remain profitable, not just over the long period, but how soon can they start making money from rolling out digital banking products. Hence, this conversation of consortiums being built up instead of a singular corporate filing for that particular license. In Singapore, we've seen consortiums being patched up, including between telcos and rideshare companies, between banks. This is an age where financial institutions are really having a run for their money because non-traditional finance players can now actually come in. Do you think that there comes a time when companies like yourself can also join in the fun and join perhaps a consortium of financial institutions and also those with deep pockets to actually, craft a digital banking offering and perhaps even gun for the license itself?
Yeah. Look, I think that's a great question. So thanks for that.
Well, thank you.
I think our view is, if you look at where we sit within the overall ecosystem, our view is we sit in the ecosystem, and what we're doing is we're really helping consumers navigate through all of the choices and the complexity that there are in the products that are available to them.
Yeah.
So in a sense, we are there to help consumers figure out, one, what is the right thing for them to do from a personal finance perspective? When is it the right time to get a product? Which is the right product for them? Why is it the right product for them? And are they likely to obtain that product as well? So if you factor in all of those sort of different ambitions that we have and how we're sort of helping consumers making the right decision, our view is we will always stay there will always be a site or a platform for consumers to come and be able to understand what is available for them out there.
So filing for the license itself might not be part of your plan right now.
Precisely. So our view is today we want to make sure that
you don't have any idea how many people are groaning right now while watching this particular statement? No, because if it's a good brand, why not, right?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, with increasing choice, increasing complexity, and increasing variety, consumers need to have somewhere where they can go to be able to really cut through the jargon and the terms and the conditions to be able to understand what does that product actually deliver for me. And that's where we believe we have a very unique position within the ecosystem, that we can actually really help consumers make those smart choices, more educated choices, and really simplifying things for them and cluttering through all of the variety that they have. So if you think about the evolution of the retail industry, right? I'm talking about 20, 30, 40 years ago. When you used to want to buy your groceries, you used to go to one shop to buy your fruit and vegetables, another shop to get your meat, another shop to get your white goods, and then you had the advent of supermarkets. right? Why do people go to supermarkets? Everything's on the one stop. They can compare prices. They can see what's available. Then they can see what's right for them, right? Similarly, you have online travel agents as well. So again, instead of going to all of the different sort of hotel sites, you go to one site and you can see what your options are. We believe we have a similar role to play in that ecosystem, especially when consumers have a lot of choice and they're not really sure what is the right product for them. But above and beyond that, the role really around personal finance and financial literacy is key to that, because only then can consumers make the smart decisions with the information available for them.
All right, we'll take a short break before we conclude our conversation with Mitul of iMoney. You are watching Notepad. Today I am with iMoney Group CEO, Mitul. Of course, Mitul, the conversation we are having is mostly revolving around, or have had so far, is mostly revolving around individuals. Let's talk a little bit about SMEs, particularly the small of that SME. Right, we're talking about sole proprietors masquerading as neighborhoods. We're talking about partnerships.
Sure.
We're talking about people literally running the business themselves and might have little to no employees in their firm or company. These kind of companies completely understand the idea of making profit, of bottom line, because their life actually revolves around that. But they might not be able to understand that taking credit is a good idea, or a bad idea for that matter, the considerations revolving around that. And of course, some of these individuals running these kind of companies tend to like to go for the grant route or the funding route, rather than, financing, even though the cost of capital is there, financing their firm outright by taking loans. What would be some of the considerations for these target group of market that you can share?
Good question. I think today the most obvious source of funding for these kind of SMEs is predominantly around venture capital or grants, as you alluded to earlier on. In terms of the more traditional forms of funding, specifically around loans and debt and other cheaper sources of capital, what we've seen specifically around the equity is the rise of crowdfunding platforms, so equity crowdfunding platforms, which have made some really good progress. And these platforms are giving SMEs access to a different source of capital, which allows them to continue with their growth plans. Now, the second piece is around getting access to debt financing. Now, typically, most of these SMEs, depending on obviously what stage they're at, may not be able to take on any debt on the balance sheet, or may not have any capabilities to even repay that debt or pay interest on it. But if and when they are, again, the obvious choice for them is to go and speak to traditional banks, and in terms of getting that bank financing in place. So I think the key for any of these entrepreneurs or any of these owners of these sort of small SMEs, what are they looking for? What is the funding going to help them drive? What is the goal that they want to get to? Number one. Number two, assessing the different options out there, and what they can easily get access to. And then number three, making sure that from a capital structure perspective, making sure they're getting the right blend of equity and debt and managing the cost of capital. But obviously the debt component only becomes relevant if they're profitable and generating positive cash flows, and they can really fund the repayment of that debt.
I just had a quick scan of your website.
Sure.
It's very much still individual based, not so much company or SME based. Is this indicative of iMoney not giving focus into the SME sector for the time being? Perhaps this is something that you're KIVing for the moment?
Absolutely. I think for us, our focus has always been more on individual consumers. Over the last 12 months, we have started working with partners who are focusing on doing, say, small business loans or targeting sort of entrepreneurs. So we do have a small business loan section on our website, although it's not very big. But for us, ultimately, it's around consumers, right? And the consumers is more around personal finance. So it's around personal loans, credit cards, insurance products, home loans, so on and so forth. And that's really a category and sort of what our focus has been over the last few years. And we probably foresee that's what it will be over the coming years as well.
Okay, so what's next for iMoney moving into 2020?
So 2020 is really exciting for us.
Not after January, right? I mean, the world is on fire in January, literally, yeah.
Yes, but if you look back in history, every year has its challenges. Every year has its opportunities. We like to look forward. And from our perspective, with respect to what we have in the pipeline, what we're going to do for consumers and how we work with some of our financial services partners, we're extremely excited and bullish. Consumers will always have a need to understand and improve their education around personal finance. They'll always have a need in terms of financial products, be those around saving money, be those around protection, be those around borrowing. And banking partners and insurance companies always have a need in terms of looking at how we can help them get more consumers on board as well. So we're in 3 markets, which is Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and we've got our hands full sort of making sure we're doing the right thing for our consumers and our partners.
All right, that was my conversation with Mitul Lakhani, the Group CEO of iMoney. If you've missed any part of this show, just head on to astro.com, look for Notepad. Plenty of interviews like this can be found there. You can watch this kind of interviews on your mobile devices. Just download the Astro AWANI app wherever you get the application. And finally, you can also listen to this podcast wherever you get the podcast. Search for Astro AWANI there as well. Thanks very much for watching and goodbye. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.